Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. The fellas heading down to the Big 12, where we've seen week after week some of the best games in college football. We said going into the year, like, there isn't an alpha dog in the Big 12, and it could be the Wild West out there, and that is certainly what it has been. But if there's one team that is making it happen week in, week out, it's the TCU Horned Frogs, going on the road this week to play a Baylor team that's been inconsistent, but we know they can play at a high level. This is going to be a really good game. It's a tight spread. TCU coming in as 2-point favorites. Excited to get into it. Before we do, though, I just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. We've talked a lot of TCU football this year. Kind of a Cinderella story. I love the offense. Max Duggan with all the speed, with all the athleticism on the outside. It's been one of the more fun teams to watch. Sonny Dykes has done an amazing job. So if you guys do enjoy the content, you like talking ball, you like talking TCU ball, Baylor ball, we really do appreciate all the support. And if you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys. Let's get into it. I want to start with this TCU offense. Probably one of the weaker showings we've seen this TCU offense have this year. Max Duggan in that offense really struggled to get going. Max Duggan against Texas, 19-29, 124 yards and a touchdown. No turnovers besides that fumble, but he didn't throw any interceptions. But it was choppy. And I think we have to admit that this Texas defense and what Coach Patterson's done, probably knowing some of the players and the personnel that TCU brings, no doubt that helped a little bit. But this Texas defensive front, it's a very good unit. I mean, you go back and see what they've done throughout the year. They're very, very good on the defensive side of the ball. But if you're TCU, you have to be really happy with just kind of a grinded out win. A lot of their wins have been kind of the shootouts where we're going to get the ball last and we're going to score and we're going to come away with a victory. Having to rely on your defense, having a slow day with Max Duggan and all those talented wide receivers and making it happen on the ground, making it happen with the defense, that's a really good sign, because you have to be able to win football games. If you want to go make a run at the college football playoffs, you have to make it happen a lot of different ways. Games are going to look different. And to see TCU kind of win more of a grinder game where you have to play good defense, where you have to run the football, that's really enticing. Second story, Kendre Miller finally getting some national recognition for being an absolute dog. A lot of the talk was Bijan Robinson and how good Bijan Robinson is. Kendre Miller has been quietly having a phenomenal year behind a really good offensive line, but you take a look at what Kendre Miller's done. He's averaging 6.6 yards per carry. He's almost over 1,200 yards on the year. They got a really good running back room. Amari DiMercato has also been really good, averaging 5.7 yards per carry. This offense is two-dimensional. They can run the football extremely well, but they also have a lot of talent on the outside that can get it done. And when we're looking at this Baylor matchup, it's tough sledding running the ball against this Baylor group. They have very good linebackers. They have a very good defensive line, but where they are vulnerable is through the air. Baylor has a young secondary that's been inconsistent this year. They didn't look great against Kansas State. They haven't really looked good at all this year. TCU is going to need to use that speed, the athleticism, and that star power on the outside, I think, to get this done. You take a look at the wide receivers. We hype on this a lot. Quentin Johnson, straight up my number one wide receiver in the 2023 NFL draft class. You take a guy who is 6'4", he runs probably a sub-4 440, getting in and out of his breaks, the ability to run after the catch. He checks pretty much every single box you want a wide receiver to check. Very, very dominant player. And even on a kind of a hurt ankle, when TCU needed to play against Texas, that's who they were going to. A very good complimentary class, though. Tay Barber's very good. Darius Davis is very good. They have some couple tight ends that I really, really like. Jared Wiley, Savion Williams, a couple big body guys. I say this, TCU wide receiver room, you kind of view it as a basketball court. You have kind of that star power forward, small forward in Quentin Johnston, who's kind of your alpha dog. You have some of the smaller guys who are speedier, quicker, and Darius Davis and Tay Barber. Then you have the big guys, Jared Wiley and Savion Williams. They have guys who can really do it all, and they use those guys exceptionally well. There's a lot of playmakers to be able to cover. Versus a Baylor secondary that is very inexperienced, very young. I expect Max Duggan and this TCU offense to have a very good day, because this Baylor defensive line, why we thought this Baylor defense would be so good is I thought they'd be able to rush the passer a little bit better than they have this year. Yes, they can stop the run. Yes, they have big bodies like Siaki Ika up front, but they haven't been able to rush the passer at a high level. And if you give Max Duggan enough time, those wide receivers will get open and they will be able to hurt you. Now, flipping the side, this was one of the weaker Baylor performances, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that we've seen. At home against Kansas State, they kind of just laid a neck. Blake Shapen, 22 of 38 for 200 yards, but he's thrown 2 picks. They weren't able to run the ball very well. Richard Reese, probably their best guy, 9 carries for 54 yards. He averaged 6 yards per carry, but on a consistent basis, they just weren't able to establish the run. Guess what? TCU, very, very good against the run. You look at what they just did against Bijan Robinson, the best running back in the country, held him to 2.5 yards per carry. This TCU team is very good against the run, and you have to shout out a lot of those guys. I'm a huge fan of the linebacker core, D. Winters, Jamoy Hodge, Johnny Hodges. Those guys fly around. They make plays. They're guys from the secondary. Come up, make tackles consistently, and then shout out Dylan Horton. Dylan Horton, you don't talk about him much up on the defensive line, running that 3-man front. He is very active. He has a high motor. He's good in the pass rush, but he's also very, very good in the run game. This TCU team only allowing 3.8 yards per carry to opposing running backs, and that's tough sledding for a Baylor team that's going to want to run the football, and they want to run it a lot. Blake Shapen's not a guy who you want to lean on to go win you football games. You have to historically, when we've seen Blake Shapen play at a high level, they're running the ball well. Then they're using that play action, letting that middle of the field open up. If they can't run the football very well, I don't really see Baylor moving the ball consistently. You look at the other side, TCU and all the weapons they have at the wide receiver spot, they're very good. And I think they're going to be able to get to Baylor a little bit. Getting to the pick, TCU coming in as road favorites at 2.5 points. TCU has covered the spread. They're 8-1-1 against the spread. We've cashed on them a lot. Vegas, for some reason, TCU's never looked great. Like, we haven't seen that. That's partially why you see them kind of undervalued by Vegas. Is the power index ratings probably don't have TCU as a top 10 team. At least that's what I'm taking from seeing the spreads be inside of a touchdown, inside of a field goal consistently. This TCU team continues to cover the spread. They continue to win football games. And what you saw last week is they can go on the road, win an ugly game where their offense really couldn't get much going, and pull out a very impressive win against a Texas team that, yeah, Quinn Ewers hasn't looked good. This is a very, very talented Texas team that TCU just beat pretty badly. I mean, they only scored 3 offensive points. This TCU team looking to really find its stride. And from a vibe standpoint, TCU, undefeated, already clinched the spot in the Big 12 championship game. They have their eyes on the college football playoffs. Baylor, on the other hand, they're just kind of scrapping to kind of have a respectable season, sitting at 6-4. A lot of teams or a lot of people thought Baylor were the odds-on favorite to win the Big 12 championship. Very disappointing year for Baylor. They're kind of banged up. They're not very confident coming into the home stretch. TCU, on the other hand, just starting to find its stride. One thing I will note, monitor Quentin Johnston's health. He obviously played against Texas, does have an ankle injury. He did not look 100%. Even Quentin Johnston at 75% is still the best player on the football field every single week, in my opinion. Give me TCU to cover the 2.5 points inside of a field goal in that short number. Again, I will keep taking TCU till we don't hit on them. They are super consistent. Even when it's ugly, they're still covering spreads. I think TCU goes on the road, beats a Baylor team that doesn't really have an identity. And that's why I'm favoring TCU. I think this is one of my favorite picks of the week. Again, close it out on that. We really do appreciate all the support you guys have shown. So if you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate y'all for real. We'll talk to y'all later.